Alright, so today's video we're going to talk about the fundamentals of swinging a sword. I'll be honest, I've avoided doing this topic up to now, basically because I wasn't sure I was competent to teach it. And what do I mean by that? It means that this is the foundations of all of our sword arts, right? If you teach this wrong, I think that you can give you really bad habits, and it's hard to break them and relearn. So I'm just going to share this primarily because I had someone ask me to make a video on this and talk about how to do kind of very fundamental work. And I feel at this point, I think I'm confident enough to at least teach what I know. So what I'll say with this is if your teacher teaches you something different, if your school does something slightly different, or you learn it differently, it doesn't mean it's wrong. It may be better. I'm going to share what I've learned and what we train at the Hall, and I'm trying to do justice to the Knights Hall and to Jay and teach you the things that he taught me when I first started this, my very first week of holding a sword and starting sword fighting. So yeah, that's what we're going to do today. We're fundamentals of sword work, and really kind of the core of this. Now, what's really important to remember is you're not going to ever fight exactly like this. You're not going to. You're going to be dynamic and moving and under pressure from people fighting you. You're going to be moving forward and back. It's going to be very much different than this. But if you have these foundational pieces, you can put most of this together in your work, and it's going to make you a better fighter. It's like any sport. So if you play basketball, you're going to learn how to shoot a basketball. You're not ever going to shoot a basketball the same way you learned how to do it in a game. You're going to be off balance and leaning back. You're going to be driving to the hoop. You're going to be doing a bunch of different things. But you're going to understand kind of how to control those core pieces. When you do get to take that jump shot and you elevate, even at an angle, you're going to know how to hold the ball, how to make the L with your elbow, when to release, how to hold your follow through, and you're going to get really good at those kind of repetitive motions. That's what this is. This is the fundamentals of the sport. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to put down our sword, because we don't need a sword to start, because we're going to talk about footwork. We're going to talk about core. We're going to talk about strength, because that's really what sword fighting is about. It's about that kind of foundational ground up mentality that's going to make you stronger. It's going to keep you from burning out your arms. It's going to keep you from getting exhausted so you can fight longer, especially in our sport where excuse me, I'm a little stuffed up. We actually just got over COVID in the house. I haven't made videos in a while because of it. Everyone's okay, but I'm a little stuffy out here today, so I apologize. But as I was saying, we're going to talk about kind of the strength of the core that's going to let you fight longer. And that's very important in our sport, because unlike some other sword sports, which are, a single point base, so the first person to strike gets a point, is maybe about that quick reaction speed. Ours are generally going to be dual base, so you're going to get multiple points in a round. It's going to be a timed round, as many strikes as you can get, or it's melee, which is about power and being able to swing a lot and be able to do a lot of damage, be able to go multiple rounds and things like that. So you've got to have a foundation that's going to keep you from getting exhausted, and it's going to allow you to be better at fighting over a longer period of time. So let's start with the most important part, which is our stance, right? So our stance is going to be very basic. So when I talk about stance, I talk about what I mean a comfortable athletic stance. So you don't want to have your legs real wide. You don't want to be having way forward and back. You don't want to be leaning. Now you'll see during long sword fights in particular, a lot of people fight with their swords really kind of leaning like this, and there's reasons for that as you advance. But foundationally, you want to be very comfortable in your stance. I think one of the hardest things for many people, I'm going to make sure that you can see my feet here, is making sure you don't have too wide a stance when you start. People tend to get really wide. Wider base feels stronger, more stable. That's somewhat true. That's more true if you can see the force coming at you and you can brace against it. It isn't as strong when there's people coming from a melee in multiple directions. Someone can sweep your foot out easier. You can be torqued easier. There's a lot of things. So, basically the foundation of this is going to be a shoulder width stance. So kind of a little bit of a narrow stance, but very comfortable and balanced. My feet are going to be on the ground, so I can feel both my heels and my toes, right? I have mobility. I can move around with the kind of the underside of my foot and feel it grabbing the ground. I don't want to be up on the balls of my feet. I don't want to be bouncing. I want to kind of have that solid stance. You're not grounding in like you're going to deadlift, but you're going to be kind of very neutrally balanced to start. And then that back foot is going to be basically against my heel to the ball of my foot is where I use as my guideline. So that's about my stance. As always, I'm a lefty. Most of you are probably righties, which means you can mimic this. I'm have my sword foot back, so you're going to flip it and reverse it to do that. So sword foot back. If I was fighting righty, it'd be the same stance here, right? Same thing, just very comfortable, very natural either way. I've got good balance. I have a bend in my knee, but I'm not way down. back's up straight, and I can move in this stance. And what's good about this is that I guess we'll call it strong stance, like with my sword foot back. Well, my opposite, if I was fighting a righty, it's just the opposite stance. With my right foot back, my left foot forward. Well, if I'm fighting sword foot forward as a lefty, that's the same stance, right? So I'm actually need to train both of those to be comfortable with it, because you're going to be doing that in different times in fights. So there's your stance, right? An important thing with sword work in our sport, because of the weight of the armor in particular, because of the way that we do multiple strikes and you're trying to get multiple points, is you want to train to fight with your feet on the ground. And what do I mean by that? Like if you throw a punch, you'll see people will pick their foot up, torque their foot to get more leverage as you come through, right? As you come through, and that's okay. With a sword, I don't want to do that very much. Oh, I lost my little thing here. I'll clip it in my pants there. Okay. I want to keep my feet down. I want to rotate through my hips. I want to rotate through my hips while keeping that foot planted as I strike. So there's almost a dip and rotation as I'm coming through. The reason for this is lets me generate power all the way through my legs, my core, my shoulders, all the way up, while keeping a strong stance. If I come up off this foot, and especially in a melee, someone else kicks me out from behind, somebody sweeps me, somebody shoves me, if I'm here as I throw either that strike or that punch, right here, I'm off balance. I'm throwing that out an off balance point, I can be shoved from behind. If I'm throwing here and someone shoves me, I'm still strong. I'm gonna take that little step forward, and I've still got that back foot strong there. So that's your stance, right? We're starting with fundamental stance. You don't need a weapon for that. You can basically get comfortable in this stance. You can use your hands as your weapon, right? And you can practice that. So next I want to talk about is hip rotation. As I'm swinging, again, I'm squared up to my opponent. You're my opponent, the camera right there, and everyone watching. So I'm going to square up to you, strong stance, have my sword up, which I don't have a sword right now. And I'm going to be swinging. As I'm swinging, I'm not using my arms. We see this, and I've done this. Everyone does this, right? You just use your arms, you throw your strikes, your arms, all different strikes. What that does is burn this arm out. You're gonna get pump, you're gonna get exhaustion, your arms are gonna hurt, you're gonna fight for a very short period of time. So all of that power has to come out of that core and out of that rotation. So as I get in my stance, I don't need a sword yet, don't need anything. You can pick up a stick if you want. I'm gonna work on just rotating those hips as I'm coming through. And I'm thinking, basically, I'm pointing out. You can really point at your target. So I'm just coming through, and that's gonna be the motion. Doing this over and over again. So as I come up, as I torque, I'm building power and I'm snapping out that strike. You can see that my arm is really kind of loose. When I'm throwing it onside, if I'm going offside, I'm rotating this way, going this way, doesn't really matter. If I'm coming down, I'm using my hips to flow. You can see that as I'm coming through. This is onside, offside strikes, but all that rotation is coming through these hips, coming through the knees, into my hips, into my rotation. I've kind of tight hips, so I actually have a harder time. I tend to pick up my foot when I'm not paying attention. But I am going to try the best I can to get snapping through here. That's where my power is generated. If I'm generating power through my arms only, if I'm standing like this and just doing this, I'm going to be very tired very fast. So that's your core. You're going to hear a phrase we'll say a lot. Shoulders over hips, or head over hips over feet, or shoulders over hips over feet, whatever you want to say. So that means my head should always stay over my shoulders, over my hips, over my feet. It's a balanced, strong stance from every angle. Super important in our sport, because our helmets are really, really heavy. Anyone who's fought at all knows this, right? So if I lean forward, for whatever reason, someone grabs my head and pulls down, not only am I fighting with you with my neck and my upper back muscles, which are weaker, versus you pushing down on me, I'm fighting you and the weight of a helmet that wants to pull me forward. So very important to keep that stance up. So if someone grabs you for a reason, you're still strong. You're still kind of in that athletic stance. You can move out of the way and things like that. So that's the real kind of foundational stance. I will talk a little bit about movement of feet, I guess, while we're doing this, which is as you have your feet, this ground's a little uneven. It's very, very frozen, so whatever. But I'm not walking, taking big steps. I'm not crossing my feet when I move. Everything's going to kind of be a slide. So I'm sliding into things whenever I can. If I switch stances, I can switch stances like this. You want to kind of get those feet to be sliding on the ground. And the more, for me, and this is very true for me, I'm a very grounded fighter, the more I can keep my feet closer to the ground, the less likely I am to have somebody pull some sort of throw or trick on me that I can't counter, right? If I come up and I pick my foot up here and someone hooks my leg from behind, I'm going down. That's very, you know, if I'm coming and I get my foot real wide, I'm now at a disadvantage. So I'm trying to keep that real strong stance whenever I move. Whatever it is, I'm kind of doing just a slide. So yeah, that's kind of the basics. That's your feet and your hips and your shoulders, all that. Let's talk about holding a sword. So I threw down my real sword for a second, but we use my waster because this is what you should be training with. Why? Because they're affordable. They're awesome. I just think that wooden swords are the best way to kind of get your basics down. So a wooden waster. Someone asked me recently why we don't have a cross guard on them. I have no idea. I just know historically they didn't have them. You don't need them. We're not actually sparring with these, so I don't need to block anything with it. I'm not worried about my hands getting cut in any way or hurt. So you don't need it. It's just probably cheaper and easier to make them like this without having to add or glue on a cross guard. So that's it. Let's talk about grip. So come a little bit closer here. So you hold your sword. The grip we're going to use is called an OK grip. OK grip is going to be basically making that OK symbol. Man, my hands are getting a little cold. I should put those gloves on I had earlier. But you make an OK symbol, right? And that's how I'm gripping my sword, primarily with these two fingers. That is the core of my grip. So I'm holding it with those two. It might be three fingers, depending on it might be your thumb or your two other fingers, depending on kind of how your strength is. But I'm not really using these two fingers. I'm not gripping the sword. I'm not clenching down on it, right? Because if I do that, if I grip hard and I swing, it's very hard for me to get, you can see this now. If I swing like this, I'm really gripping this, right? If I loosen up, see that sword snap out? I get a lot more maneuverability with it. I can maneuver around. It's coming, and as I finish my strike, I'm kind of closing this hand. I'm exaggerating for the video, but I'm closing this hand. What that does, it keeps the sword loose in my hand. And realistically, when you're fighting, you're not going to hold it like this. Like, you're going to hold it loosely, but very comfortably loose. You can see it kind of moves around in my hand. It's fine. If I need to grip it, I can, but I want to keep that very comfortable, loose kind of feeling, because that keeps you from blowing out this forearm. I don't know if anyone's done rock climbing before, but if you've ever gone rock climbing and you start climbing, you climb with just your arms, you grip everything and pull yourself up, you get that pump where you feel like you can't even like unclench your hand, like you're trying to get your rope off at the end and you can't move it. I've had that same feeling sword fighting, like so bad. So I'll get into a fight, I'll get really intense, I'll just chop people like this, and the next thing I know, this entire arm is just pumped and I can't even like let go of my sword. It's just so, it's like so locked in there. You're not gonna fight long like that. You're gonna burn out. So how do you practice that? Loose, right? So loose with your sword. We're gonna go over just the most basic strike today, an onside strike. We're gonna go really fundamental. Onside strike means it's on the same side as my sword. Right, so as a righty, I have to do the same grip my righty, or if I'm doing a righty, it's onside this side, right? So it's just an arm motion. Now again, you wouldn't throw this with just your arm, we're just working through just this piece. But if I'm doing it as a lefty, same thing, right? So it's coming down, usually at a 45. It's the most basic strike, and I'm doing that. You can see even here how little I'm using biceps, shoulders, very little, right? Very little power in this. It's still snapping out decently. Because I've got that rotation, I'm using the force, the momentum of the sword to snap. We're gonna then combine that in with our hip rotation. So we've got sword here, and we've got our legs all set in our nice comfortable stance. Get our sword foot back for this example. Like I said, you can train it this way. There's advantages to disadvantages to both. Simply put, the advantage to having your sword foot back is usually you're fighting someone of your own. They're fighting you with, they're fighting you as another righty versus a righty. It's going to be harder to hit this leg. Your shield's going to be easier to block this side, so it's hard to hit this leg. But your distance is shorter on your throw and your strike. If I switch my feet, this leg becomes more vulnerable. It's much harder to block, but I get more length on my shot. Because if you notice, as you switch your feet, you're going to be able to get a little bit more distance with your sword foot forward. So that's kind of the basics. But all right, so we'll put it all together, right? So we've got our stance here, nice and strong and athletic. I feel good. Got my nice little loose grip. Way I'd like people to start when they're beginning is sword on your shoulder to kind of get the motion down. You're probably not going to fight a lot with your sword on your shoulder unless you're like walking into the fight or you got a breather or something like that. But sword on your shoulder, because it helps you understand that road. So you're going to cock that hip a little bit, strong stance, feet stay in the ground, throw the sword out. throw the shot out, throw the shot out. Using those hips, try to keep those hip rotations, keeping that back foot planted, right? I don't want to be picking it up. I don't want to be torquing out like this, keeping it like this. This is it. That's your motion. You want it to kind of do this continuously. I just like to keep it on my shoulder. It kind of lets me reset. And I'm doing I got my shield up. We don't have a shield right now. We're just doing this, right? So we're going to keep it going like this. And you do that 100 times, 200 times, 300. You can just do it forever, right? And that's how you get comfortable. That sword becomes second nature. You don't feel like it's a tool you're trying to figure out. It's just an extension of your arm. And it really does become like that over time. You just get comfortable with how it works, right? I remember when I started this feeling of loosely gripping a sword is really weird. It's been a while to figure it out, right? So you gotta do this. Do that for a while, get comfortable with it. We'll talk the next part. We'll go over one guard, and that'll be it. So a guard. You don't need a shield for this. In fact, I won't even use it long because the back strap's unhooked. But an A guard is basically making this A-frame. Right, see this like A-frame design here? So my shield's out here, it's protecting this side of me, my sword's protecting this side of me. It's gonna be very hard to get in with a high strike anywhere on me. And then if I have to go low, I can adjust and all that stuff. So that's what an A-frame is. So how do you practice without a shield? You don't need a shield, you just need your arm. Same thing. Arm goes up here, sword goes up here. There's my A-frame. I actually like practicing without shields for a while because when you give someone a shield, the first thing they tend to do is push it up against themselves and get the bad habit of holding their shield right against them. If you give them just how your arms, people's arms will come out here more naturally. They'll understand that this is their blocking thing. It has to stay out. This is where you get that distance. So you want to kind of practice that. So you make your A-frame. And it's the same motion, right? So I've got my A-frame here instead of my shoulder. Okay, if I did my shoulder, I can do the shoulder with the shield up. It's not an A-frame yet. I'm not making it A, but I am still getting that kind of practice with shield. Then A-frame is going to be the same thing here. I'm just going to bring that sword, I'm going to rotate it, snap. Rotate it, snap. Using that leverage, reset it each time, go slow. Now the one thing I will say is I don't recommend doing this the way I'm doing it without hitting something. I'm doing it specifically for this video because you're basically having to stop that force at an end, which is bad for your tendons and joints over time and stuff like that. So you do want to hit a Pell. If you don't have a Pell, I mean literally screw a tire to a tree. That's what I did. If you don't screw a tire to a tree, find a tree. You know, you can hit a tree, not that hard, but you can kind of, and it just helps stop the momentum. So you're not, because what I'm doing right now, this finishing here and kind of having to stop the force of it is bad for your arms. So you don't want to do this long term, but it's not gonna hurt you for a video. You know, if you don't have a waster, man, get yourself a stick, like literally get a stick. Buy a piece of PVC pipe will work. You hit a PVC pipe and you can hit it off a tree. You can wrap it in something you want, you don't have to. Anything that's gonna help you get comfortable with the motions. I like wasters and things made for this because you do get the edge, right? You get the blade edge, so you're not hitting with the flat or something like that. You'll learn. You get that same tapered grip there, so you get very comfortable. If you're using a truly round object like a PVC pipe or just a stick, you know, people tend to they'll throw shots like this and they'll see how it's hitting with the flat. They don't know it because they don't have it there. So you're practicing edge contact, right? So every time reset, reset, reset. And what you should find is if you're finding the pain, it depends on where you're at athletically, but if you're finding pain like in your forearms a lot doing this, you're probably clenching too hard and using your arms. If you're finding that your shoulder's getting sore, that's, you know, and you're kind of getting your legs a little tired, that's probably means you're doing it more right? You're gonna get more, because you are gonna use that shoulder as you snap. Because I'm not really using a lot of force with any of my arms here. My arms are kind of just loose. And that allows me to do this all day. So that's the fundamentals of it, right? That's the basics. There's your stance, there's your hip rotation, there's how to hold a sword, how to swing it, your first strike. If you do this, again, the recommendation I have is you're gonna do power work daily if you can. I'll be honest, I haven't been doing it daily. I should be, but I haven't been. So you know, you wanna do this daily. You know, it's like anything else. You want to be good at it. It takes thousands and thousands and thousands of repetitions. You know, perfect practice makes perfect, all that wonderful stuff. So if you have questions, something doesn't make sense, shoot me a message. You can find me on Facebook as Woodchuck Knight. You can leave a comment down here, like, subscribe, follow, all that great stuff. Check out the merch below if you want to help support my channel. Again, I'm Chuck, Woodchuck Knight. Thanks for watching, and remember, hold your sword by the handle, not by the blade.